Ms. Tackett to lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There he is.
Mr. Bradley?
Here.
Mrs. Conway?
Here.
Mrs. Erdley?
Here.
Mr. Lesby?
Here.
Mr. Showalter?
Here.
Mrs. Tingle Sames?
Here.
Mrs. Tackett?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Full house. As we have a quorum, each of you have a copy of the minutes from our last regularly scheduled meeting of March the 9th. If you'd like to take a moment to look those over for any possible corrections or additions.
Mr. Bradley called a correction to my attention.
Yes, ma'am.
Instead of homeowner, it should be property owner.
That is exactly correct. Let me look at that. Yeah, the correction that Mr. Bradley has asked for is on the bottom of page 1, item 7. Our language has been to make the post-construction stormwater the responsibility of the property owner, is the way that should read. Are there any other corrections or additions?
Make a motion for approval.
Motion for approval's been made. Is there a second? Yes. Ms. Conway? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Each of you in your packet should also have received a copy of the check register. Could you please indicate that you received check register? Thank you. We're at the public comments portion of our meeting. And first on our list, Miss Amy Cloud.
Good evening. Most of you know that I'm part of Georgetown Main Street. I've been part of Georgetown Main Street since 2009, and I just wanted to give you a brief update. I know Megan's going to speak about Georgetown Main Street in her monthly report, but I just thought, since this was a particular project of mine, I'd give you a little bit of an update because it was the first real public event sort of thing that the Main Street program has done this year. And I brought some of the banners with me, but I wanted to give you kind of a overview of the project. Some of you may have heard, may have seen that March is Quilt Month in Kentucky, and National Quilt Day is the third Saturday in March. That was evidently started by Kentucky quilters back in 1989, and it was picked up on a national level then in the early 90s. So that's something we have as a claim to fame here, besides the National Quilt Museum being in Paducah. So Jan Atlee and I have been working with different people around the community to build our community assets and work on partnering on different events. And in December, we started working with Earlene Arnett, who is the head of the Elkhorn Creek Quilt Guild, that's a mouthful, to work with them on having quilts placed at the Arts and Cultural Center during February to have the Underground Railroad Museum quilts placed there. So December, we started working on this several months out, as always. So we have Underground Railroad quilts that were up in February for Black History Month, then stayed up in March for Women's History Month. So they're still there if you want to see them. They'll be there through this weekend. And then, of course, March being the month for quilts, I spent every Friday when I'm not working, walking up and down Main Street, talking to all the merchants on Main Street about putting quilts in their windows. If they had family quilts, heirloom quilts, they wanted to borrow quilts. So for something that was brand new that we've never done before, we had, at the count that I could come up with, probably 14 different businesses or organizations that put quilts in their windows or somewhere in the walls, in their lobbies or something like that. We had a great receptive group of people to do this. So if you have time on a nice spring day to go up and down Antique Mall and the Chamber and Angie Kilby and Art on Main, there's several in Charlie Perkins' office, so just all up and down Main Street. It was such a wonderful reception for people to support the quilt event that's out at UCON. The second part of the event that we did, besides putting it up at the Arts and Cultural Center, were to get quilt banners that we wanted to put up on Main Street, up and down the street. So I came up with 4 different designs that would really pop along Main Street, and we worked with the Here's Your Sign guy. I had several people, 4 different entities that paid for the banners, and he said, if you let me put my logo on them, I'll make banners for all the lampposts downtown, which is 40. Well, I happen to have 6 with me here, because these are the ones that have blown off the lampposts because they don't have the proper hardware. And I've had the people call me when the Here's Your Sign guy called me Sunday morning to tell me the signs that he donated to the Downtown Main Street program are blowing off and they're laying in the street. It made me pretty unhappy. So I had 6 of them I had to go pick up yesterday. I had, 4 I guess yesterday. 2 I took down because they were hanging upside down the other day. Megan had taken a few down last week right after Public Works hung them up. And I know the inventory for these missing pieces of hardware was done in the fall of 2013 and has been submitted somewhere along the line to Public Works, but I'm not quite sure where that has ended. But I have plans to do more banners in April, different ones for the Kite Festival and for the Garden Day in the Park that I'm organizing again with Jan, and part between Arts and Cultural Center and a Main Street partnership and the cooperative extension. But I'm not going to spend my time doing this if I have to have Connie Minch call me and say, hey, somebody called me to tell me my banner that I paid money for is laying on the sidewalk, and the owner of this company who donated.
Thank you. We get the picture.
Yeah. So can you do something? I don't know who's in charge of this, where it's hung up in Public Works,
Yes,
where
ma'am.
the money's not there. Sorry?
At any point, a simple phone call will get that taken care of.
Well, I've been emailing, I've been calling. I talked to Frank Chisley. He's on my promotions committee. He was there at the meeting Friday, and I asked him about it because Megan had already told me there were banners that she had picked up, and Connie Minch called me while I was at that meeting to say, someone told me my banner's laying on the ground in front of Cravens and Lewis. So I'm not sure where else to go with this. But I wanted to start out and tell you that this was a great project. I was so proud of everybody for coming through and putting quilts in their windows. It's something we've never done before, but this was supposed to be the icing on the cake.
Thank you.
And it didn't turn out to be that way. So if someone can look into this, because I'm running a couple of other banner projects this year, but I need to make sure that these things are up and running before I can have people invest money in them. Thank you.
Thank you. Megan Funk.
On a more positive note, I would like to invite you all to come to our Love Your Downtown event on Thursday of this week. We're holding it on the college's campus at the Ann Wright Wilson Gallery. It's from 4:30 to 6:30 in the evening, and we're hoping that it can be a time when people can come and see who else is involved with the Main Street program, meet some of our merchants, our residents, the employees and the businesses, and just kind of have some time to get to know each other better and talk about the positive aspects of our downtown community. I also want to let you all know that we're planning an event for April. It's on April 25th. It's called Garden Day in the Park. And we have invited we've worked with some local Girl Scout troops who are going to be doing some plantings at the Arts and Cultural Center. The Scott County Extension agents Extension Services office is also involved. And there's also some butterfly gardens that the Girl Scouts are going to be starting behind the Scott County Museum. And so we just want to let you all know about that. And we also wanted to request permission to close Water Street from Cooper Alley to Main Street, somewhat within that bounds, but not to be a greater distance of Water Street.
I'll need you to fill out an event request for that. What
Okay.
time is the garden day in the park?
The Garden Day in the park will be between the hours of 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. I believe it's actually 10 to 1, but just to give a little bit, time for setup.
Okay. Just put that all on the event request.
Okay.
The, just a plug for the council for the Love Your Downtown event. It's a nice reception to meet the folks who are doing a bunch of the work downtown. No pressure, no request, just an opportunity to meet and chat with some of these folks. And it's a very pleasant reception, and hope folks can show up and support it.
We've also,
I'm sorry, is that tomorrow?
no, it's on Thursday.
Thursday, okay, thank you.
4:30 to
Yeah.
6:30.
And you can find more about it on our Facebook page. There's a little bit more information, a flyer and such. Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Do they need action on closing the street now?
We do. Let's wait until she brings that back with the event. We can do it later.
Yeah, in terms of the street closing, Megan, we'll wait till you turn in the request form before we ask the council to take action. I'm sure that's not a problem, but we just ought to follow that sequence.
I'm not exactly sure what the procedure is, but I knew that at some point I needed to fill out a form, at some point I needed to ask for permission. I didn't know which I should be putting.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Kimberly Price?
Hello, I'm with the Scott County Softball Club, and I'm here to ask for permission.
Good.
And this is Eric Flagg. I'm sure you guys
Who? No, who?
Does he have an ID?
As you can see from what I handed you, we are in the process of trying to obtain some grants to fix some issues that we have within Marshall Park, some drainage issues on fields 1 and 5, and also scoreboards, new scoreboards, and an indoor practice facility. And so we have contracted with a grant writer. His name is Michael Stafford, to help us with this process. And this is part of the steps along the way before we can say, hey, now you can go apply for it. So we're here asking for permission to apply for some grants.
We know we had to go to Parks and Recs first, and then to you all, and then we go in front of fiscal court also.
On
to ask
Thursday.
Permission for it.
Yeah. So nothing's been done, we're just asking for permission.
We're just asking permission. Once we get the permission, then of course we get drawings and everything like that put together and bring everything back to city council and also to the court.
Good.
I make a motion for him to apply for grants.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Second, Mr. Thompson. Question for you. Do the grants that you have in mind, do they normally require matches?
The only one on this list that requires a match is the third one, the Major League Baseball. And as you can see, under the requirements down at the bottom, it discusses that. The other two are not matching.
Great. Any other questions concerning the opportunity to submit the grants? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good luck.
Thank you.
Very much.
Yeah, we-
Appreciate y'all's
I'm sure
time.
we'll be back.
We'd like to hear of your success. Eric, did the
Yes, sir. It was all taken care of. I
all that
appreciate
got
it.
taken care of this
Absolutely.
weekend? You all got your work done?
Yes, sir.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Do we have someone here from Rucker Avenue? Hey, Bill, come on up.
He's back. He's back. He's back. Mayor,
Council. I'm Bill Corkins from Rucker Avenue. And congratulations, y'all. I haven't had a chance to get here and say that before, so I'll do that tonight. And let you know that happy spring. And as a couple of my neighbors have informed me, I'm the face of Rucker, so I get to come here and ask and see how things are coming on our street. We know it's been a few months since anything's been done, and it is spring, so we just wondered if there's any progression or plan, or if you can let us know what's happening.
Sure. And after now that the weather's broken, that's an appropriate question, I believe. Where are we on timeline with?
Time to follow up.
Good answer.
Time to follow up.
We originally, as I understand it, Bill, we had given the property owner 90 days.
Yeah.
That was our understanding.
Yeah, and the 90 days should be about done. And that coincides with the breaking of the weather.
Right.
I think it's something we need to, given the spring date, we need to put back on our front burner and be able to update both the council and the neighbors about what our progress will be.
Oh, we appreciate it.
It's our intention to stay after that. I know one of the property that changed hands had a lot of work done on it prior to the weather.
Yeah, the
And
trimming
even
of the
during
bushes
this
and trees
weather.
and stuff, there's quite a bit of that was finished, yes. But the house itself, of course, there was a fire there, so it's not in the shape that porch needed to be repaired, needs even more repair.
Right.
Yeah, but, so, it's spring, and it's time to ask that question and find out, what you can tell us and let us know, and let you know that the gentleman that used to own the property still is sleeping there occasionally.
We will follow up and get back in touch with you.
Yeah, we'll report back to the council and to the neighbors.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good spring.
Thanks, Bill.
Dave Sloan. Now, Bob, I'm learning something here about agenda preparation. Do you notice how Dave slid under the public comment section of the meeting? And you're dutifully waiting for your turn on the agenda.
In Dave's defense, his is a feel-good thing.
His is okay.
Bob's not gonna be a feel-good thing?
Bob's just spending more money.
Bob, I was rooting for you, buddy.
I wouldn't mess with him. He'd just cut your water off and be done with it.
Oh, that's a good one right there.
Got the wrench in the truck.
You do probably, don't you?
With no water.
You have the power.
No showers this morning. We'll know who the.
Go ahead.
Just real quickly, Mayor and Council, one of the things we try to do to offset some of the costs is look for grant money. Unfortunately, our neighbor at Toyota does have a grant program. I looked at this back in the fall. I applied for a grant for a Lucas CPR device. What this is a freestanding CPR machine. It was a $15,000 grant. The second piece of the handout does show it applied to a patient. And a couple of things. This actually was developed overseas in the European countries. It's been out in the market several years. It is about $12,000 plus accessories. So Toyota's generously agreed to pick up the cost of that and the service contract on it. I've already had it delivered. We have to do some training. And then hopefully once it's out on the street, we'll bring it by and have a live demonstration for you in the chambers if that'd be appropriate, just to show you how it works. But one of the things that we look at is survival rates, and this has been proven to increase survival in cardiac arrest. In fact, Lexington's had it on their ambulances for a couple of years. It's battery powered. It's a one-man operation. Place it under the patient, push a button, and it does CPR until you tell it to stop. So that means our guys aren't up in the back of the ambulance holding onto the rail, pushing on somebody's chest. It's a safety issue as well. There's no match to this grant. So,
And those chest compressions are pretty fatiguing if you
Yes,
have
sir.
to maintain it.
Yeah.
and according to American Heart, CPR is probably the most emphasized portion of anything in cardiac arrest. We are getting ready to have a new release of material this fall, and a lot of the medications that we've been given for years have been proven to not be as effective as chest compressions. So this absolutely does consistent at the depth that, and it senses the patient's size. When you push that foot down, it knows how the circumference of the chest, so it knows how deep to push.
Wow. That's awesome.
So it's a very, very innovative device, and I'm glad to be able to get this on the truck. We're going to carry it on the supervisor vehicle so it can go anywhere in the county, including the Toyota. So I'm very thankful, and I do want to recognize our partners at Toyota.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's good. Bob, you can't beat that.
Okay, Marvin, you don't get your water cut off, okay?
That's all right.
Water tomorrow, so.
We
Got some
have,
in the pool.
and we have one more public comment that Ms. Tracy's going to deliver.
Georgetown College would like your all's permission to close Jackson Street at Hollyhock and Dudley on March the 28th from 9 to 5 for Today's Tigers. It's to welcome the incoming freshmen and their parents to Georgetown College. I don't have any of the paperwork right now. There was a little breakdown, but since it is the 28th, which is Saturday, pending paperwork, would you all like to approve that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just need a motion.
Motion's been made and seconded at the end of the
Holly
day.
and Millie, so.
Are you all clear on the request? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Georgetown College. Under Mayor's comments, just a couple of things that we wanted to take a few minutes and update the council on. Probably the one that's gotten the most publicity and the one that I think you'll be most interested in is the landfill update. For years, the city owned its landfill on Double Culvert Road, and at some point in the past, we sold that landfill to Waste Services of the Bluegrass, also doing business as Central Kentucky Landfill and Hauling. City carried a portion of the debt on that transaction, and we've been receiving payments of around $600,000 plus interest each year to get that debt reduced. We were recently approached by Waste Services of the Bluegrass. They wanted to pay off the indebtedness that existed on the landfill. They wanted to pay all of the principal and interest to the city. We have kept a running tab on that very closely from the entire time that we've held the debt. When we were first approached about the company to pay this off, they had a different figure in mind than we did.
Sure.
However, and that number was about $300,000 apart. Fortunately, we provided our spreadsheets and the way the interest and outstanding principal had been calculated to the company. They gave that to their CPA, and their CPA concluded that our figures were correct. So the payoff amount then was not in dispute. And Friday of last week, they tendered a check in the amount of, it was just a touch under 1.9 million. It was 1.8 and change, which satisfied all of the principal and interest on our landfill transaction. When they first brought us the check, on your behalf, we refused to accept it. There was a letter that accompanied the check, and Mr. Hartley and I were concerned that the language in the letter may have compromised our ability to seek other money that we feel like we're owed. So we actually declined the first check and actually physically sent the check away with them. They then got with their attorney, had that letter redrafted, so it was clear that we were not forfeiting any of our rights to look at other things in the contract. And at that point, we were agreeable to accepting the check. So we have received that payoff of almost $1.9 million. So we have no more debt that exists against the landfill. We've been paid in full. A portion of that money was critical to this year's operating budget. We had a $600,000 payment due in December, and us balancing the current budget was dependent upon receiving that payment. Clearly, we received that now, and we'll work with the Finance Committee and ultimately the council on how to deal with the balance of those funds. And we'll have a number of options about how to use those funds. But that's a very pleasant exercise that the council will get to undertake. There are two areas where, and Andrew's going to stop me if I go too far here. Some of this might be suitable for an executive session, but we'd rather not do that. We'd rather just talk about it in open council, unless I get too far into the weeds and the details. Some years ago, Georgetown enacted a franchise ordinance, and that would include a franchise payment from hauling companies. And the contract that we did with Central Kentucky Landfill has little to do with the franchise payment, but the hauling portion of their business does affect our franchise agreement. So we're probably looking at doing some form of an audit to determine franchise payment liability from the company. The prior city council gave the city clerk audit authority. Prior to this time, only our revenue cabinet had audit authority to look at a business's books. But the prior council gave our city clerk audit authority so we could look at franchise situations like this. And the company has been receptive to that, and we will set up a time when we'll look at some of their books and determine what liability might exist for the franchise payment. That's important because it will involve some historical funds, but also that will involve future funds because they're going to continue to operate the hauling company. And for our future revenue stream, we want to make sure we get this right so we can calculate those potential revenue sources. We also believe the contract required Central Kentucky Landfill and Hauling to handle certain post-closure cost of the landfill. And by post-closure cost, I'm primarily referring to leachate collection cost, which have been an ongoing expense. Council will recall that for many years we hauled that leachate, and once the sewer line got put in place, we've been able to treat that leachate. But regardless, there was a point in time when the company should have picked up those leachate collection costs. We disagree when that point in time is. So we've made sure that we can preserve our right to pursue that claim for leachate cost. And there's a substantial difference between what our number is and what their number might be. The language in the letter that accompanied the payoff did not affect our ability to negotiate that leachate number. And they even signed a statement saying that our acceptance of the check in no way compromised our ability to pursue the leachate cost, recover some of the leachate cost. Council will recall that there have been times in the past when certain actions by the landfill company led to a year or two delay, when things just wouldn't happen for a while. And we've indicated that that will not be acceptable in this instance, that we would like to immediately begin negotiating what that leachate number is. And our intention to negotiate that to a conclusion or go to the next step as might be necessary. The good news is they've hired a prominent Lexington legal firm. They contacted me last week in Andrew's absence, and they are ready and anxious to sit down with us, go through the contract, and begin this process of determining what the number is. So we're We have been paid off all indebtedness on the landfill, and we're optimistic that we can negotiate our way to a conclusion on the leachate collection cost. Then we'll have an ongoing revenue source from the franchise fee. Since it's been in the news a lot, I also wanted to reassure the council that even though we owned the landfill in the past, we have no ownership in the landfill today. We are owed no money on the landfill today. All of the roads leading to the landfill are state highways. So, as a council, you have no impact on the decision that Central Kentucky Landfill might make or the city of Lexington might make. Now, the fiscal court may have an interest in which roads are used. None of those roads line the city of Georgetown. So we've monitored the situation very carefully, and it's our intent to make sure that our citizens get every dollar that they have coming to them. We don't want to be punitive, and we want to respect the fact that we're going to continue to work with this landfill operator going forward. Ms. Sames asked a real important question, and that is about available airspace at the site, and will we have airspace? And we are guaranteed by contract that we will have airspace for a certain number of years.
20 years.
20 years from the date of when the contract started. So we should have a minimum. We figured about 7 years.
2002 is from the date when garbage collection first started, and it took them 2 years to construct the landfill. So January 2002 would be January 2022 that it would expire.
They also have, the landfill company has bought adjacent acreage at the landfill and has been in their permitting process for almost 2 years. Those have 3 phases to them, and they've now entered the 3rd phase of that permitting process. That was a key consideration, I believe, in Lexington's contract negotiations with this company. And I think the airspace question has been answered, at least for this interim 7+ year period. We also checked to see about our tipping rate, since that's a big cost driver for us, what it costs us to empty our garbage trucks. We're still protected on that contractually for the same 20-year period. The rate does increase by the Consumer Price Index.
It's actually 5 years.
5 years.
5 years from date of payoff on that, which is still close to. But
So
yeah,
at least
5
for
years from date of payoff.
our next 5 years, the tipping rate can only increase by the Consumer Price Index. So we built it, enough, as much protection as we could was built in.
Will we be responsible for any kind of maintenance as far as water or like the wells that we had to check years ago? Or,
Gone.
So we're out of it
Gone.
completely. Because we spend a lot of money just having the state come in and check stuff. And
The only one we have is Sims. We still have
Right.
that, but that landfill is so old.
Minimum, yeah.
Minimum.
They couldn't take that over until they were
Right.
officially closed out by the state.
Yeah.
So
So they are. Yeah.
that's why they kind of were lingering on paying, because they
Yeah,
knew
so
they
you got
could.
that. So we're completely 100% out of the landfill business.
Except for
We,
Sims.
we are,
Well, what-
except for using the facility as a municipal.
What about the contract? Explain something on the contract. I've never understood it. The part on the contract that talks about the landfill, okay, because right now we've been
What
paid.
page on, Karen?
We're done. Oh, we're on the one with no numbers on it.
You all should have gotten a handout which has all 3 of the contracts.
It's
First
not-
one is the host agreement.
Is that the one I'm on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on the host community
Might as well
agreement,
page
and
the
I'm
first
on
bit.
page 1, 2, 3, 4, the top of 4.
Got it.
We're not, right now, since they have paid, that means they paid, we're paid off for the actual landfill. Does this, it says the landfill, once the landfill exceeds 2.9 million tons, the estimated ton remaining at the current landfill, at such time as the tonnage of the waste received at the landfill exceeds So that means as they develop that new section and they're taking in all of this of Lexington, the payment per ton of waste received by WSB of the landfill shall resume and continue. So are we later going to get fees back from the landfill?
I'm glad you asked that because I was just researching that today. And the answer is not easy. It's not certain, but I'll give you a historical perspective. This is the 1999 host agreement. There are 3 agreements. 1999 host agreement, which sets forth that $2 fee, $2 per ton, which was split between the city gets $1.50 and the county gets 50. You had the sale agreement in 99, and then we amended both of those in 2012. So that agreement, as you said, says once they pay off the debt, the host fee goes away, except that if they ever reach capacity, or when they reach capacity, those fees return, which is odd. If it's met capacity, what else are you going to add to it? But then we came in 2012 and we added the following language, which is on page 6 of 12 of the operation agreement. I'm sorry, the 2012 agreement. And it simply says, until full payment, it shall remain at $2. And then it says, upon full payment, the city and county may then impose upon waste services of Bluegrass any taxes or license fees permitted by law. So it appears to attempt to modify that, but I don't know whether it does or not. But the point is, the city doesn't have the authority to levy those fees. Only the county does. So we could probably argue it. We're not there yet. We won't be to that 29 or 2.9 million tons for some time. Even with the Lexington, it's going to be several years before they hit that.
Well, according to the argument that was made at their city council, that was the biggest question on the table, was the amount of airspace that they had out there, and the Waste Management said they had plenty, but Lexington was arguing that they only had 4 years of airspace. So, and that takes us to about almost to our 20 years, close to our 20 years, but 4 years of airspace. So at the end of 4 years, then we're back to whatever happens.
And I don't have numbers on what their current capacity is. It probably would be good to have that.
Yeah, but say so.
But to answer your specific question, it's not clear whether that fee would come back. I think there's maybe an argument that it does. I think they would probably argue differently, but it is a question that we're looking at.
So it sounds like 4 to 5 years or something, some type of
It's a question I'm going to, when I meet with their attorney, I'm going to ask.
What their interpretation is. Okay, put it on record. All right, in the hauling, the only hauling that we would be receiving from them off the franchise fee is what they're doing inside, leaving the dumpsters and stuff inside the city limits. It's not the hauling that's coming from Lexington out there.
That's right.
Right, because it does not cross any city property.
Okay.
Yeah, we looked at that pretty carefully, but that's all state road outside of the city limits. The host fee, as Andrew said, has historically been $2 per ton. In kind of it was a nice deal at the time. The county let the city keep $1.50 of that, and then the county just kept 50 cents of it. Now that the deal, and I think they did that because for a long time we owned the landfill, or we owned the debt on the landfill. I've already asked the judge the question if they should go forward with a hosting agreement, how he wanted to share that hosting agreement, which got a chuckle in the question, why? So I'm not looking forward to hosting fee income in the future, because we really have no claim on the landfill, and that right is purely the county's right under state law. So we're going to be a customer of this company, but we've been paid off by this company.
Mayor, can I ask a quick question? One of you, and maybe one of Mr. Wilhite, the check cleared, I guess, right? All
The check cleared.
That's a good answer. What about Sims Road? Did the extension of the sewer line, did it pick up the leachate from Sims Road as well? Which one was costing us roughly $80,000 to $100,000 a year to haul? Was that Sims Road?
I think that was Sims, that was.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
We had to rebuild the sewer line and the pump station.
All right.
We're under no obligation to help with, this contract says the city is under obligation or something of that effect to help with the 25 entrance and Sims double cover road. So we're in no obligation with that anymore?
And all it says is,
Didn't
we
say-
used our best efforts. We've
Yeah.
never,
It said no money, but on the
Right.
flip side of it, it said for us to buy the property next to them and then turn around and sell it to them.
it's not gonna happen. But no, we are under no obligation to do that. I think that might have been the intent, or to not oppose it, or any of, we didn't have the right to oppose it anyway, but that might have been a plan at one point, was to maybe have the city purchase it and sell it back to them, but.
Well, now that we are out of it, and I think you all are pumping off the landfill down there, right? Will they still be pumping for free? Or will they put a meter in there and see how many gallons they pump to Toyota?
Nobody's ever been pumping for free.
Well, I'm just saying though, but we, what I'm saying, they've not been paying to get it pumped.
No, but we have arranged, I spoke with GMWSS and had them make sure that the billing got shifted over.
That's
So
what
we
I'm
have
saying,
stopped
yeah.
being billed and they are currently being billed, so.
Yeah. There you go.
So you picked up a good customer, hopefully.
Well, you had a good one,
Well,
but.
actually, they lost a good
Yeah, they
customer.
lost
Us.
Yeah, but it was kind of a transfer from us to them, and now it's outside revenue coming in, the way I see it anyway.
Yeah,
Is that right?
I think they let it slide maybe a couple months there, back in the transfer of getting it on, but they didn't let it slide too much.
Debt to service.
So it's under them.
And now we're going to try and collect all of that back.
There you go.
That's exactly what we're going to be about
Exactly.
Contract.
What we're
for the
gonna
next
do.
little bit. Another item I wanted to bring to the council's attention, a couple of bridge issues. Council will recall, when we did our Saturday tour, we drove up to Bridge Street.
Didn't cross it though.
We did not cross the Bridge Street Bridge. We elected to turn around before we went over the Bridge Street Bridge. State of Kentucky Bridge Inspector today came in and closed the Bridge Street Bridge.
So our judgment was good that day.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Andrew wanted to go across.
No, Andrew did not.
What was confusing about this exchange of information we had with the bridge inspector, they called last week and wanted to test the bridge. And the device that they put out on the bridge to test it weighed 7 tons.
Oh, gosh.
And they wanted permission to put this 7-ton device on the bridge. It's posted for 3 tons.
Right.
So I wanted some more information about that. And the bridge inspector said that the bridge was originally tested for a 10-ton load capacity, but that the city of Georgetown had elected to give it a lower capacity rating. I'm not sure why that would have been, unless it was to keep
Big.
the junkyard
Yeah.
Yeah.
the
Coming
junkyard
across there, yeah.
from not using that bridge. And they assured me it was safe to put this 7-ton piece of test equipment out there, and then they called back today and demanded that Public Works block the bridge immediately. They found 3 successive cross pieces had cracked in the same general vicinity. So one was not giving the support that it's supposed to get. So As of this moment, the Bridge Street Bridge is closed to traffic.
Again.
It's startling to me that they can come in and, with the stroke of a pen, close one of our bridges. But they can, and they did. You're going to start hearing from people that may use Bridge Street.
Yeah.
And I just want you to be aware that there's, traffic counts show somewhere between 400 and 500 trips a day over the Bridge Street Bridge.
It's usually-
So
We're
it
gonna
is,
put up
it
a
is
sign
huge.
that clearly lets them know who shut the bridge down.
We want them to know that it's a transportation cabinet decision and that the railroad is owned by Norfolk Southern. And we've already left a message for Norfolk Southern that they need to come fix their bridge. But we're going to get calls because this bridge has been closed. So I just wanted to give y'all a heads up there. The other bridge that is going to require some attention from us, the Lemons Mill Bridge at the end of Clayton Avenue, right by Carbide Products, when you're going out to the College Conference Center.
Going out to the center.
The state has reduced the capacity of that bridge to 8 tons and required us to post an 8-ton weight limit. At 8 tons, folks, that means garbage trucks, fire trucks, and possibly school buses can't go over the bridge. It's going to have a substantial operational effect on what we do.
What's the limit now?
8.
Is that the new limit?
It was 12.
It was 12. I
12 to
think.
8?
And it's now posted as 8 tons, and we've talked with Chief Ward, we've talked with others, and we know this is going to affect us operationally. That
Why did they do that?
Spalling.
it just, I'm not a bridge inspector, I can't answer, but poor condition. The difficulty is, I wanted to be able to ask the Transportation Cabinet, when are you going to come fix your bridge? Because it's affecting us. Unfortunately, we found paperwork that the city accepted that bridge into our road network.
Give it
So
back.
we own it.
Yeah.
I wondered if I could make a case, well, you took advantage of us, we didn't know, but, you know, we have documents indicating that we not only annexed it, but we have the deed where we accepted ownership and responsibility for it.
So is the next step going to be getting some bids on making it structurally sound to take it back to 12 tons?
We're going to have to start that process, but did want you all to be aware that it's going to affect us safely being able to drive our own equipment over a real important bridge that gets to a number of factories. It's a cut through to the bypass. This is fraught with all kinds of problems that we just as soon would not have heard.
Mayor, I know bridges were a huge issue for the county, and I know over your term, you all spent, I'm sure, millions of dollars repairing or replacing bridges. And it's not something that we've really had to deal with very much, but there are some bridges in Georgetown, and obviously tonight is a result of some of those conversations.
Now, this
Yeah.
is the only bridge we own, isn't it? Just this one?
Well-
And, no, that's right, that's state.
Is it? Because everything else belongs to the state. Or
There's a small one in Cherry Blossom that I know that conversation came up recently as
Oh,
well,
was
and
it with the
that's our responsibility there as well.
Okay.
And maybe even on Oxford, going out Oxford Road.
We've got a meeting Thursday
This week.
with officials from the Transportation Cabinet, and we've put together kind of a laundry list of issues that we'd like to talk with them about. And we're going to put this one on the list. But it was sobering to me that what appears to be a pretty stout bridge has a lowered capacity, and it's going to affect us. On the Bridge Street Bridge, Norfolk Southern has been wanting the city to replace that bridge for a long time. Some of the former serving council members will recall what Norfolk Southern offers us is their estimate that it would cost $1.3 million to rebuild the Bridge Street Bridge. They will offer us 10% of that amount, $130,000. with the understanding that their explanation that 80% of the funding is available from the federal government to replace a railroad bridge, but it would still leave us $130,000. So our response on the Bridge Street Bridge has simply been, you all need to fix your bridge. But
5 years ago, they offered 100,000, so it's up to 30,000.
Our bigger question for Norfolk Southern was, we'd like one day to see the bridge that goes over Pierce Pike replaced. It's not very attractive. It's a complete bottleneck for anything we want to do in Georgetown. And the response that Norfolk Southern gave me that was if everybody agreed that they might be able to approach a project like that in 5 to 10 years. I just said, that's not acceptable. So we'll have those ongoing conversations. But I did want you all to be aware that we've got a couple of bridges that are, one you're going to start hearing about, and the other you need to know your fire trucks can't drive over. On a more positive note, we are going to celebrate Earth Day here in Georgetown, and that is actually on your council agenda. Earth Day is Wednesday, April the 22nd, and we are going to join with some folks that are going to help us this year. Bluegrass Green Source. You all will recall Bluegrass Pride has now been renamed Bluegrass Green Source. And Ashley Cheney is here to help talk about what we're going to do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Council. Please excuse my cough. The changing weather has not been good to my sinuses. But I am very glad that you've had me here tonight to talk about Earth Day and to talk about a program that we offer at Bluegrass Green Source. Bluegrass Green Source, formerly Bluegrass Pride, is an environmental education nonprofit. We work throughout Central Kentucky with 20 different counties to offer resources and empowerment to individuals, businesses, and communities to make small changes in their lives that can make a big impact in our environment, mostly around waste reduction, litter abatement, water quality, and energy conservation. One of our programs is Main Street Clean Sweep, and that's something that we do on Earth Day, and it is a community-led litter cleanup. So what we ask people to do, and we ask businesses, especially downtown businesses, to get out in front of their business, clean up, pick up litter. We encourage community groups to get out in front of their church, get out in the parks, and to just take the day to clean up around the places that matter to them. And we provide the resources and the coordination for that event to occur. And we also provide T-shirts. I wore one today, so you can see. And it's a program that we're very proud of. It's a new program. We started it last year with 8 different communities that participated across 7 different counties. This year we have 17 communities participating to get around 12 counties. And 3 of those communities are right here in Scott County. Georgetown, Sadieville, and Stamping Ground are all participating. So we're very glad to be working in this community. Very glad to be working with the mayor, who's very supportive of this program. And I think it's going to make a big change in the downtown to kind of get people on track to really think about cleaning up, maybe looking at some of our trash systems downtown to make sure that they're all working for the businesses here to make your beautiful downtown even more beautiful. I'll take any questions.
What has really got us excited about this particular program and this particular Main Street Clean Sweep program? We've been talking ever since all of us took the oath of office about getting downtown and other neighborhoods cleaner in Georgetown. This just meshes perfectly with what our plan has been. It also meshes perfectly with what Megan Funk is working on with our downtown program, our Main Street program, getting merchants involved and getting downtown cleaner. And when Ashley and I met with Linda Wise from a public works perspective and brought in Megan, and the Main Street program has agreed to take a leadership role in this downtown cleanup, which I think is what council expected the Main Street program to be assisting with. What Ashley can help us with on the Main Street clean sweep, it's kind of interesting that this occurs on a Wednesday afternoon from 11 to 1. So it's kind of a midday break to have lunch and grab a broom and sweep up some stuff on Main Street. We've talked with our directors. We anticipate police, fire, other departments will participate in this Main Street cleanup. What we would like to do, though, is instead of making the Main Street clean sweep kind of a highlight day, we want to make it a kickoff day, a kickoff for other events that we have scheduled for the rest of the spring and summer, Saturday cleanups. We've been contacted by some church groups that would like to stir themselves into our cleanup. So if we can get the low-hanging fruit and start with downtown and getting it clean and sweep up street gutters and sidewalks, then we've talked about we want to do this all over Georgetown. We want to. I've promised some folks in the Boston neighborhood that there would be, dumpsters. Linda and I are looking at where the strategic locations for dumpsters might be, so that in every neighborhood of Georgetown you can clean out a shed or tear off an old back porch that needs to go, and just let us be a part of helping people get cleaned up without a lot of expense, but a lot of volunteer effort. So was glad that Ashley could be with us and draw attention to this kickoff day of April 22nd from 11 to 1.
Yeah. I'm also really glad that the mayor's working with us, not just Mayor Prather, but also the mayor in Sadieville and Stamping Ground are going to be working with us on a media promotion event. So I'm hoping that Scott County will be a real highlight in this big program that we have. We're hoping to have over 1,000 volunteers across the Bluegrass.
Wow, that's awesome.
Led by right here in Georgetown.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
In your talk there, you made me think of something back to landfill. The citizens of Georgetown had the free dump day.
Mm-hmm.
So is that gone now too?
Probably. There's no,
We haven't talked about it specifically yet. I think when we meet with the attorney from Central Kentucky Landfill and Hauling, I'd like to hold out and try to keep that.
Okay.
I know I've depended on it. I bet each of you all have had a truck to the landfill before on the first Saturday of the month. So I'm not willing to kiss that goodbye yet. And I think we should do our best to keep it.
Well, that just went, you were talking, just reminded me of that.
Thank you. That's a good catch.
And that could relate to a cleaner community at the end of the day, too. People that are taking advantage of it may not take advantage of it, but they may find their own place to dispose of it.
Back to the creek. Our creek, since we've done that, honestly, used to go out the country roads all the time and see refrigerators and chairs and everything on the creek beds. Now, you don't seem to see that as much as you used to, and I think that has really helped. Gives a place to maybe take a truckload and don't cost them anything, so.
Yeah, and we had such success with the hazardous waste day last year that rather than that being an every 2-year process like it's been in the past, Toyota's asked to do it again this year. So Stacy and I have been looking at the budget to see how we afford our participation, since we'd like for our citizens to be a part of that hazardous waste day. Good. A few minutes to discuss with the council the post-construction stormwater ordinance. We've already spent a lot of time talking about this and thinking about it, and you've seen numerous presentations. I wanted to bring you up to speed on where we are today with preparation of that ordinance and the time schedule that I'd like to go over with you all, and hopefully relax this process just a little bit. It's not that we're going to intentionally defy the EPA. However, I want this ordinance to be considered by the council on a schedule that you're comfortable with, and we get the right questions answered, and that we make sure that we all have the right understanding of the issue before we press forward with a decision. I'd rather we get it right than get it quick. I believe that we're acting in good faith, and the council has spent a lot of time on the issue to where the EPA will give us this additional time. But I believe we're behaving responsibly. Mr. Showalter asked a series of, I thought, really good questions after the last meeting, and he did that via email. We talked about that, and I started to respond to it and realized that I needed to do more homework before we could really respond to it well. And I think, Mark, the way we'd like to proceed is you ask a series of questions about a specific subdivision, just so we could understand a specific application. What I think we would like to do, and I think it's the information you all need, we would like to develop those numbers based on a hypothetical subdivision that would have stormwater best management practices in it, and let us calculate the cost of what, and we can give you the scenario, X number of drainage swales, X square footage of a dry pond or a retention basin, and what the periodic maintenance cost of those would be, so that we can calculate as best we can what the additional cost to a homeowners association or a property owner might be. We think that you need that kind of specific information to understand all of the approaches. So it's our intention to develop information for you at that level of detail for us to discuss. Now, the draft ordinance got a lot of progress up until the beginning of last week when Andrew and Kyle handed that ordinance off to Planning and Zoning Commission. This past week, the Planning and Zoning Commission has had the ordinance to work on the HOA involvement and those very detailed elements. That's going to come back to us now for us to read their comments and begin our effort to get this ordinance correct and get the cost estimates, Mark, that your questions got to. We would like to slow this down and not hang an arbitrary deadline out there of March the 31st. It would be my recommendation that we bring you this ordinance back, that we complete drafting the ordinance this week, get the ordinance to the council sometime late this week, then give you all until April the 13th before we take first reading of the ordinance, which will give a couple of weeks for you all to look it through, ask more questions. If we need a workshop, there's time to schedule it during that time period. Then we would have second and final reading there before the end of April. That seems to be a more rational time frame for the council to consider something of this magnitude.
I had asked some questions too in an email. Will those be answered as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And then we can have some of this conversation offline later if we need to, but also appreciated Chuck asking a question, Mr. Bradley asking a question about, did our email conversation potentially become a meeting and in any way violation of the open meetings law? And we've dug into that question pretty deeply because we want council to feel comfortable and we want you all to get the guidance that you need to do your work in a way that you know is appropriate. A council member can pose a series of questions of the mayor, and if you wish to, CC all the other council members. I can reply to all and answer all those questions. And according to Mr. Hartley and according to staff attorneys at the Kentucky League of Cities, that is not an illegal meeting. Where Mr. Bradley's concern is valid is if the conversation goes, if the thread goes real deep, and then there's another set of questions asked. and another set of responses to those. You reach a point where if that thread goes too long, then it probably should be done in a public meeting. And we'll monitor that. We're not going to let ourselves and we're not going to let the council get close to where that line is. I'm convinced that you all can ask me questions and CC the rest of the council, and I can respond to those questions. If we go 3, 4, or 5 threads deep in this, then we probably should reevaluate, stop that email conversation. The other thing that I wanted to reassure the council about is, by its very nature, email is subject to open records. And an email from any of you all to me that CCs all the other council members is a public record. It's subject to public record. So if something's open to public record, it's not illegal on our part. It becomes a judgment call when we should stop that electronic conversation and have a live discussion in the council meeting.
Would you like us to CC Dan on it? I mean, would that make it more of an open record, or at what level do you go?
Part of it becomes, once the decision, it's in the communication back and forth. When you've had enough communication that you're able to start making a decision, like I'm communicating,
Yeah.
oh, I agree with you, Polly, I agree with you, agree with you, Mark, I agree with you, Marvin. Well, then I'm made already, we've got half the council is in agreement on this, so we've already made a decision, we have enough votes to pass whatever it is. And the public hasn't been involved in it at that point, and that's where it really, that's where it really is, has crossed the line
So we
with
can
it.
ask questions and CC. Okay.
And again, I
But
want,
just not make comments, really. Just ask.
we don't, you may not commit your vote,
Oh,
things of that
I'm
nature.
correct with that,
no voting. Nothing was committed.
No commitments.
No commitment at all.
If we're seeking
This is
information.
why I was asking questions, but I needed
Your information gathering.
because I needed to find out.
And it is important for everyone to remember that any email exchange like this is going to be an open record, just fundamentally.
Oh, that's normal. I mean, that's the way it should be.
Well, I used to think if you copied the city attorney on it, it made it confidential, but that's not true. I learned that.
Dan, we've talked about this at such length. I'd be happy to give you the email exchange that prompted the question, just so you can see that
That would be wonderful,
our-
because as I was sitting here, I was writing out an open record request.
you don't
I've
need
got
to-
it. I can give you a copy. Just pass it out.
Yes, sir. Okay. So hopefully council will be comfortable with us delaying the stormwater ordinance until first reading on April 13th.
I am personally, as long as the administration is, because as you know, we were getting, I guess, information that there was some level of importance to trying to meet that timeline or that deadline.
Yeah,
So
I think we
if
felt like we had
the
to do
tide has
it.
kind of shifted a little bit,
Yeah,
you know.
we're fine.
And David, let me tell you why it shifted some. It's not just how complicated the issue is, but it also became real clear to me that this information was available for the council back in September, October of last year. And it wasn't acted on, but it just didn't seem to make sense to me that I ask you all to pick up something this weighty and have less than 6 weeks or 2 months to deal with it, and then expect you to act.
Yeah.
If there's an explanation due to the EPA, I'll be glad to provide that explanation, and I think the council deserves the additional time to consider it.
I mean, I think most of us anyway struggled with that decision on which direction to go. I know I did. I kind of vacillated back and forth on it. And anyway, some additional time I think would be probably
If the
good.
EPA had the choice between us getting it done on time and us getting it done correctly,
Yeah.
I think even they've got to see the
Yeah, correctly, yes.
So as long as Andrew feels
Let's
confident,
lay it on him. Andrew said it's okay.
we won't put the burden on you, Mayor.
Put my name on it.
There you go. Sign Andrew.
No, we'll share in this one. I just, I'm willing to accept the risk and ask you all to do your business differently. Any other questions about that?
No, sir.
Good. Let's see. For those of you that have been waiting patiently, the rest of this agenda should be relatively quick.
Well.
Well, let's see. Item 7 on the agenda, we have a municipal order approving items for surplus sale. Now, if this seems like deja vu all over again, it would be because we did do that at the last meeting, but we now have some more stuff that we would like to be inclusive in this.
Doing spring cleaning, just like you want us to.
Exactly.
Good to know.
An order declaring surplus property and authorizing the disposal of same by public auction, whereas the property described in the list attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference was acquired for use by the designated city departments, and whereas the property is in need of repairs exceeding its current value is not being used by the city and should be declared surplus. Now therefore, it is hereby ordered by the City of Georgetown Council that the property described in the attached list is declared surplus property and that the mayor is authorized to dispose of the same by public auction.
And this list is similar to the list from last week.
It's just some added public works items.
Yeah, would y'all like to know what?
They have them.
Oh, you have them?
Yeah, we had the opportunity to read them.
I was thinking about the skid off of old cylinders from trucks. Anyway, if you all have the list, and Dan, we'd be glad to give you a copy of.
Motion.
Motion's been made.
Second.
Second, Mr. Bradley. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Good. Mr. Colson. Item 8 on the agenda is a municipal order approving bid for fitness equipment. This was a grant situation that the fire department achieved.
Yep, Mayor, Council, just here seeking final approval for the fitness equipment that we did receive from a FEMA grant. Bids were open March the 6th. Our group reviewed the bids, selected Pro Maxima equipment, which was the lowest of the bids, at $30,153.24. Terms of the grant does require us to match 10%. That is within our budget, and we're not asking for any additional funds from you guys, but we've got that money, and just unless there's any questions, seeking approval.
I have a question.
Yes.
Am I reading something right or wrong? On this one, it says the number back down at the bottom is $30,135.24. And then over here, it says the number is $31.53. What's the difference? I mean, it's a small amount, but this says it's $31.35, and this one says it's $31.53. And then what's on here is 30, see?
Looks like a transfer
This is
to me.
that. So should this not be the original, even though there's not a lot of difference, but should that not be the original one? Which is it?
Chief Ward prepared this. Don't want to throw him under the bus, but looks like you got a little dyslexic there for a second.
might not want to.
135 and 153.
Who him down there?
Sorry.
They just flipped another.
The actual bid price.
Under the truck.
Rolled over.
The bus.
Sorry.
So it is actually 31.
Their bid actually shows 30,135.24.
Yeah.
So that's what should be.
Got the 5 and the 3
on
flip
the-
flop there.
On the
Okay.
municipal order.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we need to, I'll make the motion changing what's on the municipal order.
And I
to
did not
match
catch
that.
that. Sorry.
I'll second that.
Okay.
I don't know, what is that? The
30,135.34.
35.24.
The grant amount's right? $37,350.
Yes, we do have additional funds left over with the grant. Our plan is to purchase some treadmills with that additional funding. We have to go through the process with what the grant was originally designed for, close all that out, and then a request will be made, and it'll be up to FEMA to give us the authority to buy the treadmills or not. So
Would you like to read the order with the correct amount?
Sure. An order approving the purchase of physical fitness equipment from Pro Maxima for fire stations 1, 2, and 3, and authorizing the mayor to sign all relevant documents. Whereas the purchase of physical fitness equipment for fire stations 1, 2, and 3 was funded by the Assistance to Firefighters Grant in the amount of $37,350, and whereas a competitive bid process was used to purchase the equipment and 2 bids were received on March 6, 2015, and whereas Pro Maxima had the lowest bid meeting specifications in the amount of $30,135.24. Now therefore it is hereby ordered by the Georgetown City Council that the purchase of physical fitness equipment from Pro Maxima for $30,135.24, the bid response which is attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference is approved, and the mayor is authorized to sign all relevant documents.
You had already made the motion. Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Tackett with the second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. Also to note, we did, you guys approved for us to go out for grant potential for a thermal imager. We did get awarded that. We have purchased that. It just wasn't above the amount for your approval, but we did get a grant through the Fire Commission to get another thermal imager as well, so thanks.
Appreciate that. GMWSS, Mr. Wilhite. Hey, Bob.
Was we skipping this one?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Just have one item tonight. It's approval of a purchase order to Younger, Inc. for the low bid amount of $13,870. It's to install a catwalk platform with steps up to the Eagle Creek Pump Station. I hope you all got a chance to look at those photos. You can see there's not a whole lot of safe work area to work around that, so that's what we're trying to remedy. And our board has approved this item on March 17th.
Motion, Mayor.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, thank you.
What, 30 seconds of fame? It's
I gotta get you up there earlier.
No, it didn't take him no time.
Thank you. Item 10 on your agenda is first reading of an ordinance related to the amendment of the Georgetown, Scott County Subdivision and Development Regulations. Joe?
Mr. Mayor, I do have a question before he starts. Who is the sponsor of this
I'm
ordinance?
sorry, it's in your new version.
I don't have a new version.
You not pass out a new version?
No, you
did the summary, remember?
Sorry. All right, well, I revised it and apparently didn't distribute that.
Okay.
But Ms. Tackett is the sponsor.
I am.
Thank you.
And after Joe describes what it is, I'll tell you the revisions that I made, which are not
That we don't have.
anything of substance, yes.
They
All
can
right.
make copies real quick.
That would be good.
Y'all, oh,
Yeah, I mean, I'll
They were
I'll
just-
tell you the revisions between what you have and what he has is the addition of sponsor.
Okay,
I changed the title, and then everything else is formatting. Where it was bolded, it should have been underlined, and where it was struck through, it should have brackets on it. Those are the only changes that have been made. There's no substantive changes, so what you have is,
But if you'd like a copy
yes,
of that,
if you
you
like
may
a
have
copy,
it.
you may.
Have my
I can go get you one, additional. Sorry.
okay. Well, to summarize what this is we have, in our subdivision development regulations, we already have a digital submittal requirement, and that was adopted by ordinance. And since our subdivision development regulations include Georgetown, but also Stamping Ground, Sadieville, and the county, then this digital submittal requirement was added after the original adoption of the subdivision development regulations. That's why it was adopted by ordinance in each of the jurisdictions. So it was originally adopted in 2003, and the purpose of it was to, since we had our GIS system up and running, anytime we got a submittal, a development plan or subdivision plat, we'd get before we signed off on it, and it was approved and either recorded at the courthouse, or if it was a development plan, distributed to the agencies that get the development plans, we'd get a digital copy of it. And that allowed us to drop into our GIS system the layout of the development, the layout of the subdivision, if it was a subdivision, and all the layers that were involved in the drawing. So the streets, the lot lines, the water, sewer lines, all the infrastructure, it could be added into GIS. And the way GIS works is the drawing is done in layers. They can call out the individual layers in GIS. So if they just wanted to see all the water lines in the city, they could just call up that layer and they would show the water lines. So that was the purpose of the digital submittal, and that was